Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into one of the most famous pieces of literature in human history, but we're going to look at it through a very specific, highly structural lens. We'll be examining the Genesis 1 creation narrative strictly from the source text, objectively reading it like a meticulously organized architectural blueprint. Whether you're deeply familiar with this text, or maybe you're reading it for the very first time, viewing it as a deliberate, symmetrical construction project completely changes how you appreciate its design.
It literally all starts right here. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This iconic quote sets the stage for one of the world's oldest and most foundational cultural texts. It's the ultimate prologue. But you know, this opening line isn't just a poetic introduction. It's an announcement of a grand project. It tells us right off the bat who the architect is and what the project's scope entails, the absolute entirety of the cosmos, summarized simply as the heavens and the earth. But, as we'll see, the project doesn't exactly start in a pristine state.
Okay. Let's dive into this structural roadmap that will reveal the hidden symmetry of this narrative. We're going to cover 1. Formless and void. 2. Forming the environments. 3. Filling the environments. And 4. The final masterpiece.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Formless and Void. Every great architectural endeavor has to start with a site survey, right? You have to look at the raw materials and the problems that need to be solved before any actual building can commence. The source text describes the Earth's initial state this way: without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. It also mentions that the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. This formless chaos and dark void, that is the core issue of the narrative. It's basically a twofold problem. First, it's without form, meaning it completely lacks structure, boundaries, or order. Second, it's void, meaning it's entirely empty and desolate. So the subsequent 6 days of creation aren't just a random sequence of magical events. They are going to systematically and structurally resolve these two specific problems: formlessness and emptiness.
Which brings us to Section 2, Forming the Environments.
So, to solve the problem of the Earth being without form, the architect obviously must first build a structure. The first 3 days focus entirely on creating the broad spaces, the boundaries, and the environments. It's literally the framing of the cosmic house. On day 1, the text says, God says, "Let there be light," and boom, there was light. But notice what happens next. God divided the light from the darkness. He then calls the light day and the darkness night. This is a foundational separation. By dividing light and dark, time itself is actually structured. The very first environment isn't a physical room, but a temporal one, establishing day and night out of the initial total darkness. The formless is finally beginning to take form.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how day 2 is handled. The text says, God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." Okay, so firmament is a pretty archaic term, but it basically just describes a massive canopy or expanse. Remember how the Earth started as a dark, watery deep? Well, day 2 creates a vertical division. It separates the waters below from the waters up above, creating the sky, which God calls heaven. This creates our second major environment, the sky and the sea.
Moving right along to day 3, the structural framing is completed with 3 specific actions. First, the waters under the heavens are gathered into one place to form the seas. Second, this gathering allows the dry land to appear, which is called earth. This establishes our horizontal boundaries. Finally, in step 3, the earth brings forth vegetation: grass, seed-yielding herbs, and fruit trees according to their kinds. This completely finishes off the environmental foundations. Think about it. The earth now has day and night. It has sky and sea and dry land with food. The whole problem of being without form has been completely solved. The house is built.
That brings us perfectly to Section 3, Filling the Environments.
If the first 3 days solve the problem of the Earth being without form, well, the next 3 days have to solve the problem of it being void or empty. The narrative focus dramatically shifts here in the second half of the week. The architect moves from building the rooms of the cosmic house to actually populating them with inhabitants. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate aha moment of the text: the perfect architectural symmetry between forming spaces and filling them. The inhabitants created on days 4, 5, and 6 correspond exactly to the environments constructed on days 1, 2, and 3. It is an absolute masterclass in literary and conceptual design. Let's break down exactly how this filling process mirrors the forming process step by step. On day 4, the text tells us God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, along with the stars. These are set in the firmament to give light on the earth and to divide the light from the darkness. Do you see the connection? Day 4 beautifully populates the light and dark environments that were created way back on day 1. The domains of day and night now have their specific celestial rulers. The void of that first environment is officially filled.
Next up is day 5. God says, "Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens." Here, God creates the great sea creatures and every winged bird. They're blessed and told to be fruitful and multiply. So on day 5, the seas and the firmament of the sky, which were the exact environments created back on day 2, are now perfectly filled with abundant aquatic life and soaring birds. The second void is filled.
Logically following this exact pattern, day 6 begins by addressing the final environment created on day 3, the dry land. The text says, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth." The dry land is suddenly populated with all of the terrestrial animals, each according to its kind. The empty plains and forests are now absolutely teeming with life. The third and final void is filled.
And that leads us to section 4, the final masterpiece.
With the structure totally built and all the inhabitants placed, the narrative shifts to its grand climax. So the crucial point is this pivotal statement: "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion." Up until this exact moment, plants and animals were just made according to their kind. But humanity is given a completely unique status. God creates male and female in His own image. They are uniquely fashioned in the image of the architect himself, standing entirely apart from the rest of the inhabitants of the earth.
Along with this unique image comes a very specific set of mandates. Humanity is blessed and instructed to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth and subdue it. They are granted designated authority, basically given dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and every living thing that moves on the earth. Furthermore, the text specifically notes their provisions. Humanity is given every seed-yielding herb and fruit tree for food. Interestingly enough, the text also states that every green herb is given as food to the beasts and birds as well, indicating a shared, totally plant-based diet at the culmination of this creation blueprint.
At the end of this incredibly meticulous process, we get a final assessment. Throughout the earlier days, after completing a task, the text repeats the phrase, "And God saw that it was good." But now, with the environments perfectly formed and completely filled, and with humanity installed as the final masterpiece, the text upgrades it. It reads, "Then God saw everything that He had made, and indeed it was very good." It's literally the ultimate sign-off from the architect. The fully completed, perfectly symmetrical project is finally deemed very good. The evening and the morning mark the end of the 6th day. Let's move to and see how this builds, anchoring all that abstract symmetry back into a really clear chronological recap. Day 1 separates light and darkness. Day 2 structures the firmament, splitting sky and sea. Day 3 carves out dry land and provides flora. Then the filling begins. Day 4 places the sun, moon, and stars into the light and dark. Day 5 fills the sea and sky with sea creatures and birds. And finally, Day 6 populates the dry land with beasts and humanity. It is just an incredibly precise, interwoven schedule of development.
When we strip away our preconceptions and just look at the raw mechanics, this narrative reveals a genuinely astonishing level of structural design. It's a story of chaos being methodically, structurally transformed into a perfectly balanced habitat. It's a great reminder that how we choose to look at a text completely changes what we get out of it. So I leave you with this question. Does viewing this ancient text as a carefully crafted architectural blueprint change how you read its foundation? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep looking for the hidden structures in everything you read.